Hello, hello! I'm talking today about Marjorie Bruce, only daughter of the highly celebrated King Robert the Bruce of Scotland and his first wife Isabella of Mar, who sadly died shortly after giving birth. When Marjorie was born in 1296, her father was merely Earl of Carrick and one of many claimants for Scotland's essentially vacant throne. But of course, Robert the Bruce was a notoriously ambitious man. By the time his daughter turned 10, he had changed the situation completely. To make Scotland his own, he betrayed the domineering English king, gathered his friends, and even murdered his chiefest rival at Dumfries. So, in March 1306, he was crowned as King Robert I of Scotland. Well, it was not to prove quite as simple as it may have seemed at first. When he heard the news, King Edward I of England, who had come to believe that Scotland belonged to him, became so angry that he was said to have gone nearly out of his mind. He responded ferociously, mustering armies and declaring Robert Bruce with all his adherents outlawed. The new Scottish king prepared to defend his rather tenuous position, but of course the odds were stacked rather heavily against him, and he suffered a crushing defeat at Mevin in June 1306. As the power of the English duly closed in around him, King Robert I became a fugitive within his own lands. Naturally concerned for the safety of his more vulnerable supporters, King Robert sent his young daughter Marjorie into the north, along with her aunts Mary and Christina Bruce, and her stepmother, Queen Elizabeth de Burgh. They may have hoped to escape to Norway, where another of Marjorie's aunts, Isabel Bruce, was queen, but they were immediately pursued, and indeed they only narrowly escaped a siege at Kildrummy, where Marjorie's uncle, Neil Bruce, was captured. It was then up to Earl John de Strathbogie of Atholl to escort the women further north, yet they had barely reached Tain when Earl William of Ross caught up to them. As an ally of the English, William of Ross heartlessly handed his captives over to King Edward I. The English king was feeling particularly vengeful. He had cages constructed specially for Mary Bruce and for Isabella Macduff, the Countess of Buchan, who had dared to crown the Scottish king. In these small prisons, they were hoisted from the castles at Roxburgh and Berwick to be exposed to the elements and ridiculed by passers-by. Thankfully, Marjorie Bruce was considered too young for this cruel treatment, and instead she was confined to the nunnery at Wotton. She remained in English custody for over 7 years, until the tides of war turned again in Scotland's favour. At Bannockburn in 1314, King Robert the Bruce took his memorable victory over King Edward II of England. More importantly, he also took a whole slew of valuable English prisoners, who he then exchanged for his own family and supporters. Marjorie Bruce was duly returned to her homeland in October 1314. Sent to escort her from the border was Walter Stewart, 6th High Steward of Scotland and a dashing young man around her own age with whom she seems to have fallen in love. They were married the following spring. Tragically, however, their time together was short. Just 1 year later, on the 2nd of March, 1316, Marjorie Bruce fell from her horse near Paisley. Among other injuries, her fall seems to have induced the premature labor of her only son, and Marjorie died shortly afterward, in much the same way as her mother. She was lovingly buried at Paisley, and she would have been proud to know that her only son, Robert Stewart, went on to be a brave and honourable man who defended Scotland against all odds for decades. He was even crowned as King Robert II in 1371, the first of Scotland's remarkable Stuart kings, who would reign for the next 3 centuries. That's the life of Marjorie Bruce. Thank you so much for watching.